A cold and snowy December is on the way for many areas across the country. Could this be that December to remember? It's very possible. If you're a big fan of snow around the holidays, the Christmas season, things like that, then this video is certainly going to be for you. So if you haven't subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So let's start off by looking at the 46-day snow outlook from the Euro Weeklies. Now, please don't view this as a forecast. View it more so as a signal. And as you can tell, we got sort of a signal for snow all the way down to areas of the south. I mean, extending all the way to the southern plains, the mid-south, the southern Alps, even a little signal for areas of like Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, the Carolinas. That doesn't mean that you're guaranteed snow between now and Christmas Day, but listen, the pattern is going to support certainly some opportunities, I think, coming up. So let's go on and take a closer look at this. This is the central U.S. and I mean shows a signal for snow all the way down to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Of course, the further north you get, the heavier snowfall totals that you see, and shows a nice signal all the way down to Tennessee, areas of Arkansas, and a little small signal all the way down into Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. Here's a closer look at the eastern U.S. and a pretty nice signal all the way down to the mountains of Tennessee, North Carolina. I know you guys saw snow over the last 24, 36 hours, all the way down to North Georgia, northern areas of South Carolina. Of course, it's a pretty hefty signal up into the Northeast, New England, Great Lakes region, areas you typically see snow. But just remember, this doesn't extend through the entirety of winter. The first 3 weeks of December, all the way up to Christmas Day. So, this is a pretty impressive look off the Euro Weeklies when we're just extending this out to about the later portion of December. So what backs this up? And once again, do not view this as a forecast. For example, if you live in Charlotte, don't think there's going to be an inch of snow between now and Christmas Day. It's very possible we could get more. We could get absolutely nothing, even though we did see that snow yesterday in Charlotte. But this, just view it as a signal. So I just want to reiterate that. But let's talk about the time frame leading up to December. This is very important. So this is the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook. And I know you're immediately looking at this like, well, that kind of offsets what you just spoke on, Mitch. Well, the pattern leading up to kind of December 1st is going to support above average temperatures for the central and eastern U.S. We got this cold shot of air we're dealing with right now across the eastern U.S. It's very fleeting, though. It's going to warm up very fast the rest of the week, and it's going to continue to be warm, I think, all the way up into Thanksgiving Day. I do think the western U.S. begins to cool off, where they're leaning towards below average temperatures, and even when we extend this from the 22nd all the way through the 5th from the Climate Prediction Center, they're leaning towards above average temperatures for the southern tier of the country. But one thing that I want you guys to note, if you live in the South and you're thinking, well, dang, between the Thanksgiving time through the 5th of December, it's going to be warmer than average. Well, what I like to see as a cold weather and snow weather fan myself is we're seeing this blue coming from areas up further north. So the entire northern sections of the country, areas of the Northeast, western U.S., our cold air source, which is from the north, is leaning towards below average temperatures, which means we could have some, colder air coming from the source that we really need it to come from, which is the higher latitudes, the Arctic, Canada, things like that. So, don't get discouraged by looking at this. I think this is a good look, and this only goes out to the 5th. We don't have anything past this. It's from the experts of the Climate Prediction Center. Now, I do want to look at this too, leaning towards a pretty active pattern in this 3 to 4 week stretch. So I think as we're making this switch to a pattern that favors more cold and winter weather across areas of the country, there's going to probably be kind of a battleground of a storm track, where I think we'll have an opportunity of multiple storm systems, even winter storms across areas that you see in green. Green doesn't mean rain, it's just precipitation. It could be snow, could be rain, could be storms, anything in between. So I do think we'll have an active storm track as we're making that transition towards the end of this month into early December. Now, This is the part that can get kind of confusing. The warmer colors you see on your screen, that is a ridge. High pressure typically leads to above average temperatures. The bluer areas you see on your screen, that's lower pressure, a trough, and that normally leads to below average temperatures and normally an active storm track. Just storminess, lower pressure itself normally is some sort of energy, some type of storm system in the atmosphere. So we're going to start this pretty far out, all the way out till not this weekend, but next weekend, like the 22nd of November. So you see ridging over the eastern U.S. and big time ridging up in Canada, and then troughing over the western U.S. This will lead to cooler than average temperatures, which supports what I just showed you in that 8 to 14 day and even 3 to 4 week temperature outlook, below average temperatures in the west. So as we're kind of moving forward, and this is the Euro extended, the weeklies here, you can see something starting to change as we move past Thanksgiving and we get into December 1. See a big blob of blue show up over areas, a good chunk of the country, and this begins to anchor itself over areas of the eastern U.S. And then we get blocking in the higher latitudes. This sort of dislodges some cold air down into this dip in the jet. And if we got cold air coming down into this area, I'm going to draw on this a little bit, cold air dropping down into this area, and this could be some storminess, we could begin to see some winter storm threats right as we enter the month of December. Some ridging begins to spike up to Alaska. We call that a negative EPO, not a true positive PNA yet, where we have a full-fledged ridge over the western U.S., but it could definitely develop into that in time. And then as we move forward here, to me, this screams a pretty active storm track over the central to eastern U.S. with cold air to boot with it. So some ridging spiking up, dislodgement of cold air into what could be a pretty active storm track into here. And we could get some winter storm threats, especially into this area right into here. Okay, that line might be a little bit too far south, but we're not going to get super concentrated on that here. But just something could start to get going here as some cold air begins to move into this active storm track, and just colder air mixed with energy. And as we continue to move forward, we get into the middle portion of December, and the pattern looks to remain in place. Now, even as we start to get closer to Christmas, is getting to the 18th and 19th, the pattern looks the same. It continues to look like we have, blocking up here, dislodgement of cold air down, maybe a locking in of the storm track with a negative NAO. We'll get deeper into that when we need to. But this blue, just think of that as colder air and the potential for an active storm track. Okay, now if we move past this, these are temperatures in Celsius. I do want to reiterate that, so I don't want to just kind of meander through this video and not explain what some of this means. So this is Celsius at 850 millibars, which is about a mile up in the atmosphere. What I want you to really focus in on this is the blue. It means the atmosphere and the lower levels still above us, like a mile above our heads, is beginning to cool down. So we extend this all the way out to the last weekend of November. We're still dealing with a warmer atmosphere. That's the way I want you to view this, a warmer atmosphere in the eastern U.S. But as we start to move into December, this is the 2nd into the 3rd, okay, the entire country starts to develop more of a winter type atmosphere, a cooler atmosphere. And to me, if I actually extend this a little bit further out, you see how this is connected to the Arctic. We got cold air coming out of central to western Canada and kind of dropping down into the entire lower 48. I'm telling you that this is a look right here that supports a lot of cold air spilling down into the lower 48. Now, where's the storm track going to be? Is it going to be through here? Is it going to be through here? Is it going to be up here? And where's that cold air going to meet that moisture? It's a big question. Hard to get winter storms deep in the south in early December, but we've seen it happen, and we've seen it happen recently. 2017, 2018 are big examples across areas of the southeast where we've certainly seen it happen. Of course, we're not just going to focus in on the southeast, but you get what I'm saying. But as we're starting to move into the 15th, and it's almost like there's a little brief warm-up and we get closer to Christmas, and then look, the days leading up to Christmas, which I think is, in my opinion, a fantastic time of the year to get cold and winter weather. We could certainly, that's right now, we could certainly start to change up the pattern some. But moving forward here, And I know this is going to be the part where you're going to have to take my word for it unless you do understand the phases and stuff like that. This is MJO phasing, right? So for the central and eastern U.S., we want to get this into phase 8 and 1. 7's good, 2 can be good too. But right now, okay, like right now, we are not in the most favorable phase, but we could definitely still get cold air shots. For example, right now we're in phase 6, right in here. Let's make this a little bit smaller. So we're right here in phase 6. Let's use a totally different color. That's not the color I want to use. Come on, we'll get this right here. Kind of phase 6. The date is what, the 11th. So we're going to kind of meander our way throughout the rest of the month and into phase 6. But as we start to get to the end of the month, 25th, 27th, that's of November. 27th, 29th, November 1, that's December. We start to slowly ooze our way into phase 7. And in the past several winters, last winter was good. We kind of made a nice slow loop into phase 7, 8, 1, and 2, which is what created the blizzard along the Gulf coastline. But it shows a slow progression into phase 8. And by the time, we're into the 5th, 6th of December, we're getting into phase 8. And that is the glory phase for winter weather and cold shots, vice versa, for the central and eastern U.S. And it looks like we're going to slowly ooze our way into that phase. And it's a nice slow progression too. Now, sometimes it takes a while for the atmosphere to really respond to that. But I think the first 5 days or so, maybe even 10 days of December, maybe not a whole lot, but there are some signals that are certainly continuously pointing to a cold and snowy winter, especially for the eastern U.S. We need us to work into phase 8 and even phase 1. Slow progression if you're a winter weather fan like myself. Okay? Another thing that's kind of more of a big question, right, is a disruption of the polar vortex, a warming of the stratosphere in the northern and basically the Arctic region. So I'm not going to make this in motion here or anything like that, but this is the Arctic. Okay, let's make this a little bit bigger again. This is the Arctic, and you see this big blob of warmer colors. You know, the orange and the pink and the red, right? Right over the Arctic region. You got the lower 48 down here, and that's what we're watching for. So when we get a big blocking pattern, big ridge up here, okay, this can dislodge cold air down to the south into the lower 48. Quite literally dislodges Arctic air from the Arctic region, the Arctic source. When that happens, when we get the disruption of the polar vortex, the weakening of it, we can get these huge, Arctic air masses that drop down like we got last winter and the other winters prior. Seems like we've had this happen every winter for the last few winters. There's an opportunity for this to happen in December. So we're watching this. And this is going to happen probably over the next couple weeks, but there's always a couple week lag period for this to work to the surface as an actual disruption of Arctic air spilling down to Canada into the lower 48. So this is an interesting setup. A lot of people are talking about this, and this is something that a lot of times as we worked closer to in recent winters, it's faded away, but it seems like the closer we get to December, the more it's slowly locking in. But man, there's some things coming together that signal, ultimately something like this. So we are watching, we are waiting, and for a snow weather fan like me, we are hoping. So let's continue to move forward. What about between now and the period we just talked about? Any kind of big storm systems? I think the western U.S. will get active. We get into Friday. We got some energy moving into the west, some lingering lake effect stuff in the northeast. We'll talk about that in the daily forecast portion of the video. Kind of a cutoff area of energy down the southwest. Maybe a storm system moves across the Great Lakes region to the northeast this weekend, but not a lot of cold air to work with. And once upon a time, this weekend, early next week, we were getting a strong storm system signal over the middle of the country. I think we're going to get a storm system. I don't know about a strong one, though. But there's another signal showing up at about day 9 or day 10 for a hefty storm system over the middle of the country that's going to start in the western U.S. But that's kind of far out to really get detailed on. But I do want to watch. It shows a 999 millibar low about 10 days from now, popping across the middle of the country, and that obviously could bring a severe weather threat, could bring a winter weather side of this, but we'll narrow down the details as this begins to lock in, if it does. And you do look at the Euro ensemble with this potential storm system signal. It shows lower pressure over the middle of the country with this weekend, but no defined strong storm system. But it does show a little signal for that storm system on the Euro operational run here on the Euro ensemble. And here it is right there. You can see the lowering of pressure by the darkening of the blue. We'll certainly watch that. But I think regardless, there's an opportunity between now and at least up to just about Thanksgiving for a lot of snow across the higher terrain of the western U.S., the Cascades, the Sierra Nevada, the Rockies. It's been kind of a slow start to the season. I do think there'll be an opportunity for snow levels to drop, therefore more snow. I know areas like Denver, the Front Range, hasn't really gotten a whole lot, but there will be an opportunity to get more snow coming up for sure. So, and this is backed up. I'm going to have to make this a little bit smaller for you guys. This is backed up by the Climate Prediction Center, which reflects below average temperatures across the western U.S. between November 16th and the 20th. So I know you guys have been dealing with the warmer than average temperatures. I do think the pattern flips for a couple weeks, and we'll take one for the team in the central eastern U.S. with above average temperatures. And unless you're in the Northeast, you're kind of going to get hung up with troughing that continues to swoop down. But as far as today's weather, man, talk about a wild night last night, right? I had a lot of fun with you guys. Speaking about the snow, stuff like that, Charlotte, Rock Hill, the Piedmont had a nice surprise. We even had accumulating snow in northern South Carolina last night. Lancaster County, a couple tenths of an inch of snow, absolutely unreal stuff. We dealt with a little bit of snow this morning in northeast North Carolina and southeast Virginia. Let me know what you're seeing out there. But lake effect snow popping off Lake Huron, down to Lake Erie, down to Lake Ontario. So we're getting some snow flying around, a little disturbance moving through that's sweeping with the motion of this trough. Illinois, Indiana getting some snow, so this will continue to sweep through this area today. But the western U.S. very quiet. Watches, warnings, and advisories. Winter storm watches are up for the Sierra Nevada. Some wind alerts, red flag warnings are up for areas of Texas and Florida. It's dry. Freeze warnings are up. I mean, in my house is 29 degrees right on the dot this morning, so definitely our lowest temperature of the year here in central South Carolina. But freeze warnings are up. We still have lingering winter weather advisories across West Virginia and surrounding states, and some lake effect snow warnings and winter weather advisories across areas in the interior, Ohio Valley, and New England area. No risk of severe weather today with cold Arctic air mass dominating the region, and no risk of excessive rainfall either. Southeast today, any kind of lingering snow flurry activity in those areas I just mentioned will fade away. We could have some lingering northwest flow stuff that you don't really see being picked up on the HERM model here in the North Carolina, Tennessee, very possible here. But very quiet day of weather. The Northeast looking very snowy, very festive snow-wise. And in fact, this afternoon, I do think we will likely get some snow flurries, snow showers in southern New England also, even as far south as New York City, northern New Jersey. But you can see the flurries flying around and just bursts of snow. I do think things will simmer down a little bit until we get later in this evening. Another round of snow could move in throughout New York State, even northern PA, and we'll wake up tomorrow morning, do it again. A little bit more warmer air to boot here, but the Northeast will be dealing with a little bit of snow. But like I said, just a little bit more warm air. Some of these areas that might get snow today might be more so rain tomorrow, as that Arctic air mass is swooping in and swooping out very fast. Snow between now and about 1 a.m. Thursday, a lot could add up in areas of the interior New England region. Just to take a closer look at my friends up here, Erie, another 2-3 inches of snow, but of course in these favored higher terrain areas just southeast of Erie, between Buffalo and Jamestown, some areas could get several inches of snow. And then looking at New York State, this is what you're looking at. Additional snowfall totals. Pause the screen if you need to. Syracuse, another 4 to 5 inches of snow. And then looking up into Maine, my family up here, this is how much snow you guys are expecting. So South Central U.S. continues just to be quiet. Nothing to speak on. I mean, it has just been quiet for a long time down here. Nothing. Lingering snow will continue across the UP of Michigan And it might get going again later on tonight, but I do think warmer air begins to take over. But Western U.S., quiet. I do think that'll change over the next couple of days as we're going to get some more active weather that moves in, which is what we talked about earlier in the video. Eastern U.S. Still gripped by the cold air, not near as cold as yesterday for some of these areas, but still a very chilly day. Look how cold it is all the way down to Florida, 50s for highs. Northeast locked below freezing for many areas. If not, you'll be in the 30s. Look how it's warming right back up across the plains. A lot of snow melt if you got it here in North Dakota, South Dakota. And still don't have the cooler than average temperatures yet across the western U.S., but I do think that'll change. So let's go back to this, create a timestamp. I know I haven't made a Bible devotion since late last week, but I got you one this morning. This morning we are in Romans chapter 12, verse 6 through 8, and it says, it says, according to the grace given to us, we have different gifts. If prophecy, use it according to the proportion of one's faith. If service, use it in service. If teaching, in teaching. If escorting, I can't say that word, in exhortation. Giving, I should have practiced that more, but I know you guys are probably correcting me in the video. Giving with generosity, leading with diligence, showing mercy with cheerfulness. When I have to read a word that I have a hard time saying out loud on the fly there, I typically mess it up, and then about 5 minutes later after the video, I typically like, why did I mess up that word at all? But anyways, it's Romans chapter 12, verse 6 through 8, if you want to turn to your Bibles and look and correct me on that. I know some people's versions are different, but I wrote a couple things, and I always am talking about gifts, things like that. And I just wrote, I do believe we all have a gift. It's up to us to use that gift to glorify God. And I said, why should you know your spiritual gift? It reveals God's plan and purpose for your life. It gives God glory by you pursuing that plan. When you pursue His plan, chances are you are aligned and utilizing the gift God has given you. When you are doing these things, you are being used as a bridge to help lead others to Christ, spreading the gospel. So we talk about all the time, guys, and I know we would just repeat ourselves, recycled information, but this is spiritual recycled information, so good stuff. But how everything connects. And I do think there's a multi-step process. One is really trying to seek what your gift is. And I think you do that by getting the word, just do things that get you closer to God. And the next thing is really pursuing that gift that that you're confident that you have. And that a lot of times is going to take you getting out your comfort zone. So, if your gift is teaching, then, I think that you might know what that is. Like my wife is a teacher. She's great with kids. She has a lot of patience, which I lack. If your gift is encouraging others, I feel like I'm pretty good at that. Then, do that. And, some people, whatever your gift is, you got to polish it so you can go out and utilize it to help spread that gospel. And God is, I always say this, God is ready to use you. He's ready to use me. I challenge myself every day. There's some mornings, I'll be honest with you guys, where, it's like, I'll skip the Bible devotion part of the video this morning and, I'll just kind of read. But then I'm reminded I need to do this not only for you guys, but for me too. It helps me. So just challenge yourself every day, guys. But you got a gift. If you don't know what it is, pray. Definitely, get that relationship closer to God, and I think it'll reveal itself to you. God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk again soon.